When Daniel walked into a fancy restaurant for his first blind date in years, he had no idea the woman sitting across from him was Isabella Vaughn, the billionaire CEO who paid his salary. A fateful night changed everything as the lines between power and love began to blur. Follow this story to the end, like and comment with the city you're currently viewing to let me know how far my story has progressed. Daniel Carter stood in front of his bathroom mirror, adjusting his collar for the third time. The fabric felt stiff against his neck, unfamiliar. He couldn't remember the last time he'd worn a button-down shirt that wasn't for a work presentation. The reflection staring back at him looked tired, lines around his eyes that hadn't been there 5 years ago, jaw tight with the kind of tension that came from raising a kid alone while juggling 60-hour work weeks. "Dad, you look weird." He turned to find his daughter Mia leaning against the doorframe, arms crossed. She was 8 now, sharp as hell, with his dark hair and her mother's ability to cut straight through his bullshit. "Thanks, kid. Real confidence booster." "I mean, you look okay. Just not like you." She tilted her head. "Uncle Ryan made you do this, didn't he?" Daniel sighed, running a hand through his hair, and immediately regretting it when he remembered he'd actually tried to style it. "Your uncle thinks I need to get back out there." "What does that even mean?" "It means he won't stop bugging me until I go on this stupid date." Mia's eyes lit up. "A date? With who?" "No idea. That's kind of the point of a blind date." "That's so weird." She wrinkled her nose. "What if she's like really mean or boring? Then I'll eat fast and come home." He grabbed his jacket from the bed. "Mrs. Patterson's downstairs. Don't give her a hard time about bedtime." "I'm not 6, Dad. Could have fooled me last Tuesday when you tried to convince me that midnight was a social construct." She grinned, and for a second he saw the little girl who used to think he could fix anything. These days, she was growing up faster than he could keep pace with, asking questions he didn't always have answers to, pushing back against rules that used to be gospel. "Be good," he said, kissing the top of her head. "Have fun," she called as he headed downstairs. "Try not to be weird." The drive into downtown Chicago gave him too much time to think. His brother Ryan had been relentless about this for months, ever since Daniel had made the mistake of mentioning that work was going well and Mia was adjusting to 3rd grade. Ryan had taken that as code for, "My life is so empty and joyless that I desperately need romantic intervention," and had apparently decided to play matchmaker. Daniel had resisted, hard. But Ryan had a way of wearing people down, showing up at his apartment with takeout and guilt trips, texting him articles about how children of single parents did better when their parents modeled healthy relationships. That last one had been a low blow. So here he was, driving to some upscale restaurant he'd never heard of, about to meet a woman whose name he didn't even know. All because saying no one more time would have meant enduring another lecture about not letting the past define his future. The past. Christ. He didn't want to think about that tonight. The restaurant was called Luminaire, tucked into a neighborhood he'd only ever driven through on his way to somewhere else. The kind of place with a minimalist sign and windows that didn't show you what was inside. He pulled up to the valet, feeling immediately out of place, when a kid who couldn't be older than 19 took his keys and handed him a ticket without making eye contact. Inside was worse. All low lighting and polished surfaces, tables spaced far enough apart that conversation stayed private. The kind of ambient music that probably cost more to license than his car payment. The host, not a hostess, a host, in a suit that looked tailored, greeted him with a smile that was professionally warm and personally indifferent. "Reservation name?" "Carter. I'm supposed to be meeting someone." The host glanced at his tablet. "Of course. Your party has already arrived. Right this way." Daniel followed him through the dining room, trying not to calculate how much this meal was going to cost. Ryan had insisted on picking up the tab. My treat for being a good sport. But Daniel still felt the price tag hovering over everything. Cloth napkins, candles in actual glass holders, a wine list on its own leather-bound menu. They rounded a corner into a more secluded section of the restaurant, and the host gestured to a table near the window. "Enjoy your evening." Daniel's first thought was that there had been a mistake. The woman sitting at the table couldn't possibly be his date. She was too everything. Too poised, too elegant, too much like someone who belonged in this restaurant and 1,000 others like it. dark hair falling in waves past her shoulders, a black dress that was simple and probably cost more than his rent, the kind of posture that came from years of knowing exactly how much space you were allowed to take up. His second thought, arriving about half a second after the first, was much worse. He knew her. Not personally, not really. But he'd seen her in meetings from a distance. Company-wide emails with her signature at the bottom. The quarterly all-hands where she stood on a stage and talked about growth targets and strategic vision while he sat in the back row and tried to stay awake. Isabella Vaughn. His boss. Not his direct boss, there were layers of management between them, but functionally, yes. The CEO of the company he'd worked at for 3 years. The billionaire whose face sometimes showed up in business magazines in the break room. She looked up as he approached, and he watched the exact same realization hit her. Her expression didn't change much. She was too controlled for that, but something flickered in her eyes. Surprise. Then recognition. Then something that might have been horror, quickly buried. For a long moment, neither of them said anything. Mr. Carter. Her voice was level, professional. The same tone she used in meetings when someone presented a quarterly report. Ms. Vaughn. His voice came out rougher than he intended. I think there's been a mistake. I think several mistakes have been made. She set down her water glass with precision. Did Ryan set this up? Ryan's my brother. You know him? He works in our marketing department, 3rd floor. She exhaled slowly, and he caught the first crack in her composure. He approached me last month, said he had a friend who might be a good match. I didn't realize... She stopped. I should have asked more questions. Daniel's brain was still trying to catch up. His brother worked on the same floor as the CEO. Since when did Ryan have that kind of access? And why the hell would Isabella Vaughn agree to a blind date set up by someone from marketing? This is... He couldn't finish the sentence. Too many words competed for space. Inappropriate. Awkward. A potential HR nightmare. I should go. Wait. She held up a hand. Not a command, but not quite a request either. Sit, please. Every instinct told him to walk away. To apologize, make some excuse about a family emergency, and get the hell out before this got any more complicated. But something in her expression stopped him. She looked not vulnerable, exactly. Isabella Vaughn probably didn't do vulnerable. But there was something there. A flash of the same discomfort he felt, maybe. Or just the recognition that leaving now would make this story something people whispered about in break rooms for months. He sat. The silence stretched between them, filled only by the ambient noise of the restaurant. Silverware on plates. Low conversation from other tables. The soft jazz bleeding through speakers he couldn't see. I don't do this, Isabella said finally. Blind dates. Any dates, really. I told Ryan no. Multiple times. What changed? She picked up her wine glass, then set it down without drinking. He was persistent, and he made some valid points about work-life balance. Her mouth curved slightly, not quite a smile. Ironic, coming from someone whose idea of a vacation is checking email from a different time zone. Daniel recognized the deflection. He used the same technique with Mia when she asked questions he didn't want to answer. So you agreed to meet a complete stranger at an expensive restaurant because your employee thought you needed to get out more? When you put it that way, it sounds worse. I'm not sure there's a way to put it that sounds good. This time she did smile. Small, but real. Fair point. The waiter appeared then, impeccable timing or terrible luck. Daniel couldn't decide which. Good evening. Can I start you off with something to drink? Isabella glanced at Daniel, a question in her eyes. Are we doing this? He should say no. Should make excuses and leave and pretend this never happened. Monday morning, he'd see her in the all-hands meeting and they'd both act like they'd never met outside the context of office walls and corporate hierarchy. Scotch, he heard himself say. Neat. The Macallan 18 if you have it, Isabella added. Then, to Daniel, on me. Least I can do for the ambush. The waiter nodded and disappeared. Isabella folded her hands on the table, and Daniel noticed she wasn't wearing the rings she usually had on in meetings. No wedding band. He'd never heard anything about a husband, but also none of the other jewelry he'd seen. Just a simple watch that probably cost more than his car. So, she said, this is awkward. Understatement. We could leave, both of us. Pretend this never happened. Could we, though? Daniel leaned back in his chair. Tomorrow, I'm still going to know that my boss went on a blind date that my brother set up. You're still going to know that I own exactly one decent shirt, and it's the one I'm wearing right now. That's not information you can just forget. I forget things all the time. Quarterly reports, budget meetings, the names of half the people who work for me. She paused. That sounded worse than I meant it. Little bit, yeah. I meant, there are 5,000 people in this company. I can't know everyone. But you know me. I know of you. She met his eyes. Daniel Carter, Tech Operations. You fixed the server issue last year that saved us from losing a major client. You also filed a complaint about working conditions in the data center that led to a full review and updated safety protocols. He blinked. You remember that? I remember complaints that have merit, and people who aren't afraid to make them. The waiter returned with their drinks, and she waited until he left before continuing. You think I don't pay attention to what happens in my company? I think you have better things to do than memorize the name of everyone who sends an email to HR. Maybe I don't. She took a sip of her scotch. Or maybe I've learned that the people who speak up are usually the ones worth listening to. Daniel didn't know what to do with that. In 3 years at Vaughn Technologies, he'd never had a conversation with Isabella Vaughn that lasted longer than 30 seconds. Most of what he knew about her came from company newsletters and the occasional elevator ride where they'd stood in silence while she typed on her phone. She was a name on a building, a signature on a paycheck. Not a person who remembered his complaint about faulty ventilation systems. Your turn, Isabella said. What do you know about me? Besides the fact that you're worth more money than I'll see in 10 lifetimes. Besides that. He considered lying, softening it, but something about the way she was looking at him, direct, unflinching, made him think she'd see through it. Not much, honestly. You started the company 7 years ago, grew it fast. You're on a bunch of boards and committees that I can't keep track of. You give good speeches about innovation and disruption, but you also make sure the coffee in the break room doesn't taste like motor oil, which is more than I can say for my last job. That's it? That's all that matters to me. I don't care where you went to college or what your favorite color is or any of that stuff. I care that my paycheck's clear and my work environment doesn't suck. He paused. And I guess I care that you apparently remember me filing a complaint about broken air conditioning, which is weird, but in a good way. She studied him for a moment, and he had the uncomfortable feeling of being assessed. Not judged. He'd been judged by people a lot less impressive than Isabella Vaughn, but measured, like she was trying to figure out if he was being honest or just telling her what she wanted to hear. I grew up in Lansing, she said abruptly. Michigan. My dad worked in a factory. My mom cleaned houses. We didn't have money for college, so I worked 3 jobs and got loans I'm still paying off, even though I probably could write a check for the full amount tomorrow. She twisted the stem of her wine glass. I don't tell people that. The official bio says I worked my way through school, which is true, but it doesn't mention the part where I lived in my car for a semester because I couldn't afford rent and tuition. Daniel didn't say anything. Wasn't sure what to say. This wasn't the version of Isabella Vaughn that existed in company emails. I'm not telling you this for sympathy, she continued. I'm telling you because I want you to understand that I'm not... She gestured vaguely. I didn't grow up like this. The money, the restaurants, all of it, that came later. And sometimes I think people assume I don't remember what it's like to check your bank account before buying groceries, but I do. I remember all of it. Why are you telling me? Because you asked what you should know about me. And that's what matters. Not where I went to college or what my favorite color is. She met his eyes. And because if we're going to sit here and have this deeply uncomfortable conversation, we might as well be honest. The waiter returned, asking if they were ready to order. Neither of them had looked at the menu. Isabella ordered something Daniel didn't catch, too focused on trying to reconcile the woman across from him with the figure he'd built up in his head. The untouchable CEO. The billionaire who lived in a different world. She was still those things, but she was also someone who remembered living in her car, who paid attention to complaints about ventilation, who agreed to a blind date because an employee in marketing wouldn't stop asking. I have a daughter, Daniel said once the waiter left. Mia, she's 8. Her mom and I, that didn't work out. He left when Mia was 3. Haven't heard from her since. Isabella's expression shifted. Not pity, he would have hated that, but something closer to understanding. That's hard. Some days more than others. Mia's great. Smart, funny, doesn't take shit from anyone, including me. He smiled despite himself. But raising a kid alone while working full-time isn't exactly the life I imagined at 25. What did you imagine? Doesn't matter. That life didn't happen. It matters if it's still taking up space in your head. He looked at her, surprised by the directness. You always this blunt? Usually more so. I'm being polite because this situation is already a disaster. She leaned forward slightly. But yes, I don't see the point in dancing around things. Life's too short, and I spend too much of it in meetings where everyone's afraid to say what they actually think. Must be lonely. It is. She said it simply, without self-pity, a statement of fact. I have colleagues, employees, board members, people who want things from me or want to be associated with me. I don't have many friends, and dating, she laughed, sharp and humorless. Dating is impossible when everyone either wants your money or is intimidated by it. I'm definitely intimidated by it. Good. That means you're honest. She took another sip of scotch. I agreed to this date because Ryan promised me you didn't know who I was, that you'd never Googled me or asked around. He said, you were a normal guy with a good heart who just needed to get out of the house more, which, in retrospect, was a massive red flag that I should have caught. Ryan's an idiot. Ryan's well-meaning. There's a difference. She paused. But yes, also an idiot. Their food arrived. Daniel's steak, Isabella's salmon, both plated like art installations. He picked up his fork and tried not to think about how much this meal cost. Tried not to think about Monday morning, when he'd go back to work and she'd still be the CEO and he'd still be the guy who kept the servers running. This can't happen, Isabella said quietly. You know that, right? What can't happen? This. Whatever this is. We work for the same company. I'm your boss, several layers removed, but still your boss. There are policies, rules, very good reasons why this is a terrible idea. I know. So we finish dinner, we go our separate ways, and Monday this never happened. Agreed. They ate in silence for a while. The food was good, better than good, but Daniel barely tasted it. His mind kept circling back to the way Isabella had looked when she talked about living in her car, the crack in the polished exterior. The suggestion that maybe the person sitting across from him was more complicated than the figure he'd built up in his head. I volunteer, he said, breaking the silence, at a community center on the south side, teaching kids basic computer skills, how to code, how to stay safe online, that kind of thing. Isabella looked up from her plate. Why? Because I grew up in a neighborhood where the schools couldn't afford decent technology. By the time I got to college, I was years behind everyone else. Had to teach myself everything. He set down his fork. I don't want other kids to have that same fight, so I volunteer, twice a week, when I can swing it. That's... She stopped, searching for words. That's good. Really good. It's selfish, too. Mia comes with me sometimes. I want her to understand that not everyone has what she has. That being comfortable means you have a responsibility to the people who aren't. You're a good father. I'm a tired father who's making it up as I go and hoping I don't screw up too badly. He picked up his glass. But I'm trying. That's all I've got. Isabella was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. I fund scholarships for kids from low-income families who want to go into STEM fields. Full ride, tuition, room and board, books, everything. I don't publicize it. There's no press release or photo op. She shrugged. I remember what it's like to want something and not be able to afford it, so I try to make it easier for other people. How many scholarships? This year, 43. She met his eyes. But if you tell anyone at work, I'll deny it. I don't want people thinking I'm doing it for good press. Why are you telling me? Because you told me about volunteering, and because... She hesitated. Because I'm tired of pretending I don't care about things. It's easier to be this cold, calculating CEO. People expect that, but it's exhausting. Daniel understood that better than he wanted to admit. The performance of holding everything together, of being strong and capable and never letting anyone see the cracks. They finished their meal, shared a dessert neither of them wanted, but both picked at out of obligation. Talked about things that didn't matter. Chicago winters, bad movies they'd seen recently, the best pizza in the city, safe topics. Easy conversation. When the check came, Isabella grabbed it before Daniel could even reach for his wallet. "This was my mistake," she said. "Well, Ryan's mistake, but I'm paying for it, literally. At least let me—" "Daniel." She looked at him, and there was something in her expression he couldn't quite name. "Let me do this, please." He nodded, watched her sign the check without even glancing at the total. Wondered what it must be like to have so much money that you didn't have to think about it. They stood, gathering their things. The restaurant had emptied out while they'd been talking, just a few other tables still occupied, couples leaning close in conversation, a group of businessmen on their fourth round of drinks. Outside, the valet brought their cars around. Daniel's aging Toyota looked worse than ever next to Isabella's sleek black Mercedes. She paused before getting in, turning to face him. "This was—" She stopped. "I don't know what this was." "Weird," Daniel offered. "Definitely weird. But not terrible." "No, not terrible." She smiled, small and genuine. "Monday. We go back to normal. You're an employee. I'm the CEO. This never happened." "Agreed." "Good." She opened her car door, then paused again. "Daniel?" "Yeah?" "Your brother's not entirely an idiot, just mostly." She drove away before he could respond, leaving him standing on the sidewalk with the valet and a head full of thoughts he didn't know what to do with. The drive home was quiet. Daniel's mind kept replaying moments from the dinner, the way Isabella had laughed at his joke about bad coffee, the crack in her voice when she'd talked about growing up poor, the look in her eyes when she'd said dating was impossible. His phone buzzed at a red light. "Ryan. How'd it go?" Daniel typed back, "We need to talk tomorrow." "That bad?" "That complicated." He didn't elaborate, tossed the phone onto the passenger seat and focused on the road. Mrs. Patterson was on the couch when he got home, watching some crime procedural with the volume low. She stood when he came in, gathering her purse and jacket. She was good. Went to bed at 9 without a fight. Miracle. "How was your evening?" "Interesting." That was the only word he could find that fit. "Really interesting." After Mrs. Patterson left, Daniel checked on Mia. She was asleep, sprawled across her bed with a book open on her chest. Some fantasy novel about dragons and magic. He marked her page, set the book aside, pulled the covers up. She stirred, eyes opening halfway. "Dad?" "Go back to sleep, kiddo." "Was it okay? The date?" "It was fine." "Just fine?" "Mia, sleep." She smiled, already drifting off again. "You look less weird now." He stood in her doorway for a moment, watching her breathe, thinking about Isabella's scholarships, his volunteering, the way they'd both admitted to being tired of pretending. His phone buzzed again. Another text, but not from Ryan this time. Unknown number. "This is Isabella. Ryan gave me your number. I hope that's okay." His finger hovered over the screen. It wasn't okay. It was the opposite of okay. This was exactly the kind of thing they'd agreed not to do. He should delete it. Block the number, go to bed and wake up Monday and pretend the evening had never happened. He typed back, "It's okay." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. I shouldn't have texted. Probably not. But I wanted to say thank you for staying, for being honest, for not treating me like I'm made of glass. Daniel sat on the couch, staring at the message. Thought about all the reasons this was a bad idea. The policies. The power dynamics. The fact that he had a daughter to think about and couldn't afford to lose his job over something as stupid as texting his boss after a blind date. You're not made of glass. You're just a person who happens to have a lot of money and a fancy job title. Just a person. I like that. He should stop. Should say goodnight and put the phone away and let this end here. "Good night, Isabella." "Good night, Daniel." He deleted the conversation, sat in the dark living room for a while, thinking about everything and nothing. Monday would come. They'd go back to their separate worlds. This would be a story he'd tell himself sometimes, late at night when he couldn't sleep. The time he accidentally went on a date with a billionaire CEO and lived to tell the tale. That's what he told himself. But even as he climbed into bed and closed his eyes, he knew it wasn't true. Something had shifted. Something had changed. And Monday was going to be a hell of a lot more complicated than he wanted to admit. Monday morning came too fast. Daniel woke up to Mia jumping on his bed at 6:30, already dressed for school and holding a waffle she'd apparently made herself. It was burned on one side and still frozen in the middle, but he ate it anyway because the look on her face told him she was proud of the attempt. "You're up early," he said, checking his phone. No new messages. He'd checked 3 times already since waking up, which was ridiculous and he knew it. "Field trip today, Science Museum." She bounced on her heels. "Can I have money for the gift shop?" "How much?" 20? Try again. 10? He pulled a 10 from his wallet, then added a 5. "Don't spend it all on candy." "I'm not 6, Dad." "You say that a lot lately." "Because it's true a lot lately." She grabbed her backpack. "Are you okay? You look weird again." "I look the same as I always do." "No, you look like you do when you're thinking too hard about something. Like when the servers crash and you get that face." He didn't have a face, except apparently he did, and his 8-year-old could read it better than he could hide it. "I'm fine. Just tired." Was the date really that bad? It wasn't bad. It was just... He stopped, because how the hell was he supposed to explain this to a kid? It was complicated. "Are you going to see her again?" "No." "Why not?" "Because sometimes things are complicated in ways that make them impossible." Mia frowned, processing this. "That's a grown-up answer. I hate grown-up answers." "Yeah, well, welcome to my world." He dropped her at school and sat in the parking lot for 10 minutes afterward, watching kids stream through the doors, thinking about what he was going to say if he ran into Isabella at work, thinking about whether he should have responded to her text differently, thinking about all the ways this could go wrong if he wasn't careful. His phone rang. Ryan. Daniel answered on the 3rd ring. "We need to talk." That's exactly what I was going to say. "Coffee in 20? I'm already late for work." "This won't take long. There's a place near your office, Bruno's." Daniel sighed. "Fine, 20 minutes." Bruno's was the kind of coffee shop that served drinks with too many words in their names and charged $7 for something that used to cost $2. Ryan was already there, sitting at a corner table with 2 cups in front of him. "I got you a black coffee. Figured you wouldn't want any of the fancy stuff." "Smart." Daniel sat down, took a long drink. It was good coffee, at least. "What the hell were you thinking?" "I was thinking my brother hasn't been on a date in 5 years and needed a push." "A push is setting me up with someone from your gym or your book club or whatever. Not your boss, not the CEO of the company I work for." Ryan had the grace to look embarrassed. "I didn't think it would be a problem. You work in different departments, different floors. It's not like you'd run into each other every day." "That's not the point." "Then what is the point?" Daniel set down his cup harder than he meant to. "The point is that there are about 1,000 ways this could blow up in my face. HR policies, workplace gossip, the fact that she could fire me with a phone call if things went south. She wouldn't do that." "You don't know that." "Actually, I do." Ryan leaned forward. "Isabella's not like that. She's fair. She cares about her employees. Hell, she remembered your name from one complaint you filed 2 years ago. Does that sound like someone who'd fire you over a bad date?" "It sounds like someone who pays attention, which makes this whole thing even more complicated." Ryan was quiet for a moment, stirring his coffee even though it didn't need stirring. "How did it go, really?" Daniel thought about lying. But this was Ryan, who'd been there when Mia's mom left, who'd helped him move into his apartment and watched Mia every time Daniel had to work late. They didn't keep secrets from each other, not the important ones anyway. "It went well, too well." "What does that mean?" "It means we talked, really talked. And she's not..." He struggled to find the words. "She's not who I thought she was. She's funny and smart, and she grew up poor and she funds scholarships for kids who can't afford college. She's real, Ryan, and that makes this so much worse." "Why worse?" "Because now I can't just write her off as some untouchable billionaire who lives in a different world. Now she's a person I actually liked talking to." Ryan smiled, the kind of smile that made Daniel want to punch him. "So you like her?" "I didn't say that. You didn't have to." It doesn't matter if I like her. We agreed it was a one-time thing. We're going back to normal today. And you believe that? I have to believe that. Ryan picked up his coffee, studying Daniel over the rim. You know what your problem is? I'm sure you're about to tell me. You're so busy protecting yourself that you never let anything good happen. You've been alone for 5 years because you're terrified of getting hurt again. I'm alone because I have a daughter to raise and a job that takes up 60 hours a week. Bullshit. You're alone because it's easier than being vulnerable. Ryan set down his cup. I'm not saying you should chase after Isabella Vaughn and risk your job. I'm saying maybe don't close the door before you know what's on the other side. You sound like a greeting card. I sound like someone who wants his brother to be happy. Daniel didn't have a response to that. He finished his coffee in silence, checked the time. I need to get to work. Think about what I said. I'll think about how you ambushed me with my boss and almost gave me a heart attack. That too, Ryan grinned. But seriously, think about it. The office felt different when Daniel walked in. Nothing had changed. Same gray cubicles, same hum of computers, same smell of burnt coffee from the break room. But everything felt off-kilter, like someone had tilted the world a few degrees and he was the only one who noticed. He made it to his desk without running into anyone important. Logged in, checked his email. 43 unread messages, most of them automated alerts from systems that probably didn't need monitoring but sent notifications anyway. Carter. He looked up. His manager, Steve, stood at the entrance to his cubicle, holding a file folder and looking annoyed. Steve always looked annoyed. It was his default expression. Yeah? Conference room B, 10 minutes. What's this about? Performance review. Daniel's stomach dropped. That's not scheduled until next month. Plans changed, 10 minutes. Steve walked away before Daniel could ask anything else. Performance reviews didn't just move up without reason, especially not to a random Monday in April. Daniel's mind immediately went to the worst-case scenario. Someone had seen him with Isabella. Someone had reported it. He was about to get fired for fraternizing with a superior, even though they hadn't fraternized. They just had dinner and a conversation and a text exchange that he'd deleted. He should have blocked her number. Should have made it clear that this couldn't happen. Conference room B was small and windowless, the kind of room where bad news got delivered. Steve was already there, along with someone from HR whose name Daniel could never remember. Linda? Lydia? She had a laptop open and an expression that gave away nothing. Sit down, Daniel. Steve gestured to a chair. Daniel sat. What's going on? We've received some concerns about your work. Concerns? Specifically regarding your access to financial systems. The HR woman, definitely Lydia, turned her laptop to face him. On the screen was a spreadsheet, highlighted cells showing transactions Daniel had never seen before. Can you explain these? He leaned forward, scanning the data. They were system transfers, moving small amounts between accounts. Nothing huge, $50 here, $100 there, but enough to add up. And they were all tagged with his login credentials. I didn't do this. These show your username and password. I don't care what they show. I didn't do this. His voice came out sharper than he intended. I have access to those systems for maintenance, not transactions. I've never moved money between accounts. That's not my job. Steve exchanged a glance with Lydia. We need to investigate. Investigate what? Someone's using my credentials. That's fraud, not a performance issue. We understand your position, but until we can verify... Verify what? That I'm not stealing from the company? Daniel stood up, chair scraping against the floor. I've worked here for 3 years. I've never had a single complaint about my integrity. And now you're accusing me of financial fraud based on a spreadsheet? We're not accusing you of anything, Lydia said, her voice maddeningly calm. We're simply investigating irregularities. By suspending me? By asking you to step back from financial system access until we can determine what happened. It took everything Daniel had not to walk out, to not tell them exactly where they could shove their investigation. But he had Mia to think about, bills to pay, a life that depended on this paycheck clearing every 2 weeks. Fine, investigate. But I didn't do this. We appreciate your cooperation, Steve said, standing. You can return to your regular duties for now. We'll be in touch. Daniel left the conference room feeling like he'd been hit by a truck. His hands were shaking, adrenaline and anger mixing into something that made his chest tight. He walked past his cubicle, past the break room, straight to the stairwell where no one would see him lose his composure. He sat on the steps, head in his hands, trying to breathe through the panic. This wasn't real. This couldn't be real. He'd done everything right, followed every protocol, never accessed anything he wasn't supposed to access. Someone had set him up. The thought arrived cold and clear. Someone with access to his credentials had used them to move money, and now he was taking the fall. The question was who? And why? His phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number, but he recognized it immediately. "Are you okay?" Isabella. Of course she knew. She probably got alerts about every investigation in the company, probably had the spreadsheet on her desk right now. He shouldn't respond. This was exactly the kind of thing that could make everything worse, but his fingers moved before his brain caught up. Been better. "I heard about the meeting. You mean the meeting where I got accused of stealing?" "You weren't accused. They're investigating irregularities." "Same thing. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again." "It's not the same thing, and for what it's worth, I don't believe you did it." Daniel stared at the message. She didn't believe him. The CEO of the company, who had every reason to assume he was guilty, didn't believe he'd stolen money. Why not? "Because I pay attention to the people who work for me, and you're not someone who steals. You don't know me well enough to make that call." "I know enough." He wanted to believe her, wanted to trust that this would blow over and everything would go back to normal. But normal had been slipping away since Friday night, and he wasn't sure he could get it back. "I can't lose this job." "You won't. You can't promise that. Watch me." The dots disappeared. No follow-up. Just those 2 words, confident and absolute. Like she could fix this with sheer force of will. Maybe she could. She was Isabella Vaughn. She'd built a company from nothing, survived in an industry that chewed people up and spit them out. If anyone could make a problem disappear, it was her. But that wasn't how this was supposed to work. He wasn't supposed to need rescuing, and she wasn't supposed to be the one doing the rescuing. He deleted the conversation again, stood up, straightened his shirt, and went back to his desk. The rest of the day crawled by. Daniel kept his head down, answered emails, ran diagnostics on systems that didn't need diagnostics. Every time someone walked past his cubicle, he tensed, expecting another summons to a conference room. Another accusation. It didn't come. By 5 o'clock, he was exhausted. Not from the work, he'd barely done any, but from the constant vigilance, the waiting for the other shoe to drop. He picked up Mia from after-school care, listened to her talk about the Science Museum, nodded in the right places even though his mind was elsewhere. She showed him a rock she'd bought at the gift shop, some kind of geode that sparkled when you held it up to the light. "It's supposed to have healing properties," she said. "The lady at the shop said so." "That's just marketing, kiddo." "Maybe, but it's still cool." She turned it over in her hands. "Dad, are you sure you're okay? Why does everyone keep asking me that?" "Because you're doing the thing where you pretend everything's fine, but it's obviously not." He pulled into their apartment complex, parked, turned to face her. "Work stuff. Nothing for you to worry about." "Is it bad work stuff?" "It's complicated work stuff." Another grown-up answer. "I'm a grown-up. That's all I've got." She studied him with those 2 old eyes, the ones that saw more than he wanted her to see. "If something's wrong, you'd tell me, right? If it's something you need to know about, yes. But you get to decide what I need to know. That's how being a parent works." She didn't look satisfied with that answer, but she dropped it, grabbed her backpack and her geode and headed inside. Daniel followed, feeling the weight of the day settle into his bones. He made dinner, spaghetti from a jar, nothing fancy, and they ate in front of the TV because neither of them had the energy for conversation. Mia did her homework at the kitchen table while he cleaned up, and by 8:30 she was in bed with another fantasy novel, this one about wizards and ancient prophecies. "Night, Dad." "Night, kiddo." He was halfway down the hall when she called out again. "Dad?" "Yeah?" "I think grown-ups make things more complicated than they need to be." He smiled despite everything. "You're probably right." His phone rang at 9:15. Unknown number, but he answered anyway because, at this point, what did it matter? "Daniel Carter?" The voice was unfamiliar. Male, professional, with the kind of neutral tone that meant business. Speaking. This is Marcus Webb from IT Security. I'm calling about the investigation into your account access. Daniel's heart kicked into overdrive. Okay, well, we've been running diagnostics on the financial systems, and we found something interesting. The transactions in question were initiated from an IP address that doesn't match your work computer or any device registered to you. So someone else did it. It appears that way. We're still tracing the source, but I wanted to let you know that as of now, you're no longer under investigation. The relief hit him so hard he had to sit down. You're sure? Positive. We'll have a full report by Wednesday, but the preliminary findings clear you of any wrongdoing. Someone compromised your credentials and used them without authorization. Who? We're working on that, but you should know, this wasn't random. Someone targeted your account specifically. Why? That's what we're trying to figure out. Marcus paused. In the meantime, we've reset your passwords and added additional security measures. You should be able to access your systems normally tomorrow. Thank you. Just doing my job. Have a good night, Mr. Carter. The line went dead. Daniel sat on the couch, phone still in his hand, trying to process what he'd just heard. Someone had targeted him, set him up. And if Marcus was right, it wasn't random, which meant someone wanted him gone, or at least wanted him to look guilty. The question was who, and whether this had anything to do with Friday night. His phone buzzed. Another text from Isabella. I heard. I'm glad it's resolved. How did you hear? The guy from IT just called me 10 minutes ago. I asked to be updated on the investigation. Why? Because I don't like seeing good people get screwed over for things they didn't do. He should thank her and leave it at that. Should maintain the professional distance they'd agreed on. But something in her message, the directness, the lack of corporate speak, made him want to push back. Is that the only reason? The response took longer this time, long enough that he thought maybe she wasn't going to answer. No. What's the other reason? Because I can't stop thinking about Friday night. Daniel's breath caught. This was dangerous. This was exactly the kind of thing they'd said they wouldn't do. Isabella, I know we said we'd go back to normal. I know this is a bad idea, but I'm tired of pretending. Pretending what? That I didn't feel something when we talked. That I don't want to see you again. He stared at the message for a long time. Thought about all the reasons this was impossible. The power dynamics, the workplace policies, the fact that his job had almost been destroyed today, and getting involved with his boss was a guaranteed way to make that happen again. But he also thought about the way she'd looked at him across the table, the way she'd trusted him with her story, the way she'd said she remembered what it was like to be poor, to struggle, to be someone other than the person everyone assumed she was. This is a terrible idea. I know. We could both lose a lot. I know that too. So why are you telling me this? Because I'm 30 years old and I've spent the last 7 years building a company and forgetting how to be a person. And then I met you, and for the first time in years, I remembered what it felt like to connect with someone. Really connect. Not because they want something from me or because I'm useful to them, but because we actually understood each other. Daniel closed his eyes. This was the moment where he could walk away, block her number, pretend this conversation never happened. It would be the smart thing, the safe thing. I felt it too. So what do we do? I don't know. Can I see you again? Every rational part of his brain screamed no, but the part of him that had felt alive for the first time in years during that dinner, the part that had deleted her texts but couldn't stop thinking about them, that part was louder. When? Tomorrow night, after work, somewhere private. Where? My place. That was even worse. Going to her apartment crossed every line they'd drawn, but maybe that was the point. Maybe they'd already crossed those lines the moment they'd sat down at that restaurant and decided to stay. Send me the address. You're sure? No, but I'm doing it anyway. Okay. Tomorrow, 7 o'clock. He deleted the messages, sat in the dark living room, heart pounding, wondering what the hell he'd just agreed to. Tuesday at work was quieter. Daniel got his system access back, received a formal apology from Steve that sounded about as sincere as a corporate training video, and spent the day fixing problems that didn't require him to think too hard. He kept his head down, avoided the break room, and didn't make eye contact with anyone he didn't have to. Isabella sent him her address at noon. A building in the Gold Coast, the kind of neighborhood where doormen wore suits and parking spots cost more than his monthly rent. He looked it up on his phone during lunch, zooming in on the street view, trying to imagine walking through that door. This was insane. This was career suicide waiting to happen. But at 6:30, he found himself texting Mrs. Patterson to ask if she could watch Mia for a few hours. And at 7, he was standing in front of Isabella's building, telling the doorman he was expected. The elevator ride to the 23rd floor felt like it took an hour. His reflection in the mirrored walls looked exactly how he felt, nervous, out of place, like he was about to make a mistake he couldn't take back. The doors opened. He found her apartment number, knocked before he could talk himself out of it. Isabella answered immediately. She was dressed down, jeans and a sweater, hair pulled back, no makeup that he could see. She looked younger like this, less like a CEO, and more like the person he'd talked to at dinner. "Hi. Hi." He stepped inside, taking in the space. It was nice. Of course it was nice, but not as overwhelming as he'd expected. Hardwood floors, big windows overlooking the city, furniture that looked comfortable instead of expensive, books on shelves, a laptop open on the coffee table, signs of a life actually lived here. "Can I get you something? Water? Wine? I have beer if you prefer." "Isabella." She stopped, looked at him. "Why am I here?" She didn't answer right away. Walked to the window, stared out at the light stretching across Chicago. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet. "Because I'm tired of being careful. I'm tired of making smart decisions that leave me alone at the end of the day. I'm tired of pretending I don't want things I'm not supposed to want." She turned to face him. "And I want this. I want you. Even though it's stupid and risky and could blow up in both our faces." Daniel crossed the room, stopped a few feet away from her. Close enough to see the uncertainty in her eyes. The vulnerability she usually kept buried under layers of control. "I have a daughter. A life that depends on me making smart choices. I can't afford to lose my job." "I know. If this goes wrong, I'm the one who gets destroyed, not you. You're the CEO. I'm just what? Just an employee?" Her voice sharpened. "You think that's all you are to me? I think that's what the world will see. The power dynamic, the scandal. You'll survive it. I won't. So we're careful." "How? How do we be careful when everyone at work knows your face and mine? When one wrong look in the hallway could start rumors?" "We figure it out." She stepped closer. "I'm not asking you to risk everything. I'm asking you to give this a chance, to see where it goes. And if it goes nowhere, then at least we tried. At least we didn't spend the rest of our lives wondering what if." He wanted to argue, wanted to list all the reasons this couldn't work. But she was standing there looking at him like he was the only person in the world who mattered, and all his careful logic evaporated. "This is a bad idea. Terrible idea. We're both going to regret this. Probably." He kissed her, not because it was smart or safe or the right thing to do, but because he'd been thinking about it since Friday night, and he was tired of pretending he hadn't. She kissed him back, her hands finding his shoulders, pulling him closer. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, she smiled. "So we're doing this." Apparently, he touched her face, still trying to believe this was real. "But we need rules." "Rules?" "No contact at work, no emails, no texts during business hours. We keep this completely separate from the office." "Agreed. What else?" "No one can know. Not your assistants, not my coworkers. If this gets out before we're ready, it won't. I can be discreet. Can you? Because you're not exactly anonymous." She laughed. "Fair point, but yes, I can keep a secret when it matters. And if someone finds out anyway, if this becomes a problem, then we deal with it. Together." She took his hand. "I'm not going to let you face this alone, Daniel. Whatever happens, we handle it as a team." He wanted to believe her, wanted to trust that they could navigate this without destroying each other. But the part of him that had been burned before, the part that knew how badly things could go wrong, kept whispering warnings he couldn't quite silence. "I need to go. Mia's with the babysitter." "Okay." Isabella walked him to the door. "When can I see you again?" "I don't know. Friday, maybe?" "That's 3 days." "I know." She kissed him again, softer this time. "Be careful driving home." You too. I mean, he shook his head. You know what I mean. She smiled. I do. The elevator ride down felt different, lighter somehow, like he'd left some of his careful control on the 23rd floor and couldn't quite get it back. His phone rang before he made it to his car. Ryan. Where are you? Heading home. Why? Because I just saw your car parked in the Gold Coast, and I know you don't know anyone who lives there except... Ryan paused. Tell me you're not doing what I think you're doing. I'm not having this conversation right now. Daniel, I mean it, Ryan. Not now. Just be careful, okay? I know I pushed you into this, but I didn't think... I know what you thought, and I know what I'm doing. Do you? That was the question, wasn't it? Daniel ended the call, drove home through streets that looked exactly the same as they had an hour ago, even though everything felt different. Mrs. Patterson left as soon as he got back. Mia was already asleep, homework done, dishes in the sink. He stood in her doorway for a long time, watching her breathe, thinking about all the ways this could go wrong. But also thinking about the way Isabella had looked at him, the way she'd said they'd handle it together. Maybe that was enough. Maybe it had to be. His phone buzzed one last time before he went to bed. Thank you for coming over. Thank you for asking me. Good night, Daniel. Good night. He didn't delete the messages this time. Fell asleep with his phone on the nightstand, a small act of rebellion against all the rules they'd just agreed to follow. The next 3 weeks moved in a strange rhythm, days that felt ordinary on the surface but hummed with an undercurrent Daniel couldn't shake. He went to work, picked up Mia from school, volunteered at the community center on Thursdays. Everything looked the same. But underneath, his life had split into two versions of itself, and he was living both simultaneously. At the office, he was careful, painfully careful. He avoided the executive floor, took stairs instead of elevators when he thought Isabella might be in one, kept his emails professional to the point of being sterile. When they passed in hallways, which happened twice in those 3 weeks, they nodded like strangers. Her face gave away nothing. His probably gave away too much. But Friday nights, and sometimes Tuesdays when Mrs. Patterson could stay late, he drove to the Gold Coast and became someone else. Not someone different, exactly. Just someone who didn't have to measure every word and gesture. Someone who could sit on Isabella's couch with takeout containers spread across the coffee table and argue about whether deep dish or thin crust was real pizza. Deep dish is a casserole, he said one Friday, pointing his chopsticks at her. I will die on this hill. You're going to die on a lot of hills if you keep eating lo mein like that. She was curled up on the other end of the couch, wearing yoga pants and one of his hoodies she'd somehow claimed as her own. And deep dish is an art form. It's bread soup. Take that back. Make me. She threw a fortune cookie at him. He caught it, cracked it open, read the fortune out loud. You will find happiness in unexpected places. He looked up. Well, that's on the nose. Mine says I should play the lottery. She showed him the slip of paper. Clearly, these things are very accurate. They ate in comfortable silence for a while. Some documentary playing on the TV that neither of them was really watching. This had become their routine: food, conversation, the careful dance of learning each other without the weight of their professional lives pressing down on them. Mia asked about you again, Daniel said eventually. Isabella set down her container. What did you tell her? That I'm seeing someone. That it's new and complicated and I'm not ready to introduce them yet. How did she take it? She said I used the word complicated too much, and that I should just bring you over for dinner so she can decide if she likes you. She sounds terrifying. She is. 8 going on 30. He picked at his noodles. I hate lying to her. You're not lying, you're just omitting the truth? That's the same thing. Isabella was quiet for a moment. Do you want to introduce us? The question caught him off guard. They'd been careful to keep this thing between them contained, separate from the rest of their lives. Meeting Mia would mean acknowledging that this was more than just stolen evenings and careful planning. It would make it real in a way that scared him. I don't know. Maybe. Eventually. He set down his food. What about your life? Am I just this secret you keep locked away? Do your friends know about me? I don't have many friends. That's not an answer. It's the answer. She pulled the hoodie tighter around herself. I have colleagues, business associates, people I see at charity events who make small talk and forget my name the next day. But actual friends? People I trust? That list is very short. How short? 2 people. My assistant Marcus, who's been with me since I started the company, and a woman named Claire I went to college with who now lives in Seattle, and we talk maybe once a month. She looked at him. I'm not good at letting people in, Daniel. I learned early that vulnerability gets weaponized. That's a lonely way to live. It's a safe way to live. Those aren't the same thing. I know. She shifted closer, resting her head on his shoulder. But then you showed up and made me want to be less safe, which is inconvenient. He kissed the top of her head. Sorry for the inconvenience. You should be. They stayed like that until Daniel's phone alarm went off at 10:30, his signal that he needed to leave to get home before Mrs. Patterson's rate went up. Isabella walked him to the door like she always did, kissed him like she was trying to memorize the shape of his mouth. Same time next week? If I can swing it. He touched her face. I'll text you. Be careful driving. Always am. But careful wasn't enough. That became clear the following Tuesday, when Daniel walked into work and found his brother waiting by his desk, looking like he'd been up all night. We need to talk, Ryan said without preamble. Daniel glanced around. The office was filling up with the morning crowd, people getting coffee and booting up computers. Not here. They went to the parking garage, found a corner away from the security cameras. Ryan leaned against a concrete pillar, arms crossed, jaw tight. People are talking. Daniel's stomach dropped. About what? About you. About where you've been going on Friday nights. About why you've been so distracted lately. Ryan's voice was low, urgent. Someone from accounting saw your car in the Gold Coast 3 weeks ago. Then again last week. They put it together. Well, put what together? Don't play dumb. They know you're seeing someone. And they know that neighborhood is where Isabella lives because there was this whole thing last year about her buying a penthouse, and it was in the business section of the Tribune. Ryan ran a hand through his hair. They're connecting dots, Daniel, and when those dots connect, this whole thing explodes. Who's they? Does it matter? One person tells another, who tells another, and suddenly everyone knows, or thinks they know. We've been careful. Not careful enough, apparently. Ryan pushed off the pillar. Look, I'm not trying to be a dick about this. I set you 2 up. I wanted this to work. But I also don't want to see you get destroyed because someone in accounting likes to gossip. Daniel leaned against the wall, the cold concrete seeping through his shirt. What do I do? End it, or come clean. Those are your options. Coming clean means HR investigations. Conflict of interest reviews, probably losing my job. And ending it means you give up something that clearly makes you happy. Ryan's expression softened. I'm sorry, man. I really am. But this is the corner you've been backed into. Daniel drove home that night with Ryan's words circling his brain like vultures. End it or come clean. 2 options, both terrible. He picked up Mia from school, helped her with homework, made dinner that neither of them ate much of. She asked if he was okay 3 times before he finally snapped at her. I'm fine, Mia. Can you just drop it? She stared at him, hurt flashing across her face before she buried it. Fine. Whatever. She disappeared into her room. Daniel sat at the kitchen table, head in his hands, hating himself. This was what happened when you tried to live 2 lives. Eventually, the walls between them crumbled and everything collapsed. He texted Isabella at 9. We need to talk. Her response came immediately. What's wrong? Can I come over? Now? Yeah. I'll tell the doorman to expect you. Mrs. Patterson arrived 20 minutes later, giving him a look that said she knew something was wrong but wouldn't push. Mia stayed in her room, door closed, music playing too loud. He knocked once. I have to go out for a bit. I'm sorry for snapping at you. No response. He left anyway because staying would mean explaining things he didn't know how to explain. Isabella opened her apartment door before he could knock. She was in work clothes still, which meant she'd come straight home from the office. Blazer, slacks, heels, she kicked off as soon as the door closed. What happened? He told her everything, Ryan's warning, the gossip spreading through accounting, the way people were starting to notice patterns. She listened without interrupting, her expression growing more closed off with each sentence. "So they know," she said when he finished. "They suspect. No one has proof. But it's only a matter of time. What do you want to do?" "I don't know. Ryan said I should either end this or come clean, but both of those options are—" He stopped. "I can't lose my job, Isabella. Mia depends on me, and I can't drag you through some HR nightmare because I was stupid enough to think we could keep this hidden. You weren't stupid. I was the one who pushed for this. We both pushed for this. We both knew the risks." She walked to the window, that same spot where she'd stood the first night he came over. The city lights stretched out behind her, millions of people living their lives without having to choose between love and survival. "What if we did come clean?" she said quietly. "You heard what I just said. I heard you, but what if there was a way to do it that didn't destroy you?" She turned to face him. "I could restructure some policies. Make it clear that relationships between employees at different levels are permitted as long as they're disclosed and managed properly. Create protection so you can't be fired or retaliated against. That's not how the world works. It's how my company works if I say it does. Isabella, you can't just rewrite the rules because we're sleeping together. I'm not rewriting them for us. I'm rewriting them because they're outdated and unfair, and they punish people for being human." Her voice sharpened. "You think you're the only person in this company who's ever fallen for someone they work with? You think rigid policies that force people to choose between their jobs and their personal lives actually help anyone? That's not the point. Then what is the point? That we should hide in shadows because other people might talk? That we should end something good because it's inconvenient for corporate structure?" She crossed the room, stood in front of him. "I spent 7 years building this company. I get to decide what values it represents. And I'm deciding that it doesn't punish people for being in relationships. People will say you're doing it for me, that you're abusing your power. Let them. I'll survive gossip. I've survived worse. But will I?" He took her hands. "You keep talking about protecting me, but you can't protect me from everything. If we go public with this, I become the guy who slept his way into the CEO's good graces. That's the story people will tell. Not the one about us meeting on a blind date or actually liking each other, just the scandal. So we give them a different story." "How?" She was quiet for a long moment, thinking. "We own it. We tell the truth before the rumors get too loud. We disclose the relationship through proper channels, we follow whatever protocols HR sets up, and we make it clear that this is legitimate. Not some sordid affair, but two adults who met and connected and decided to see where it goes." "You're really willing to do that? Put yourself and your company through that scrutiny? For you?" "Yes." She said it simply, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. "I told you I wasn't going to let you face this alone. I meant it." Daniel wanted to believe her, wanted to trust that they could navigate this without losing everything. But the part of him that had been raised to play it safe, to never take risks he couldn't afford, kept pushing back. "I need time to think." "Okay. And I need you to really consider what you're offering. Because once we do this, we can't undo it. Your reputation is on the line too." "I know what I'm risking." She pulled him close. "Do you?" He kissed her instead of answering, because he didn't have an answer. Not yet. Not when everything felt like it was moving too fast and spinning out of control. He left an hour later, more confused than when he'd arrived. Drove home through empty streets, trying to untangle his thoughts. By the time he got back, Mia was asleep, and Mrs. Patterson was watching TV with the volume down. "Everything okay?" she asked as she gathered her things. "Getting there." She gave him a look that said she didn't believe him, but wouldn't push. "That daughter of yours is stubborn, gets it from you." "Great. That's just what I needed to hear." After she left, Daniel checked on Mia. She was sprawled across her bed again, book open on her chest. He marked the page, set it aside, pulled the covers up. She stirred but didn't wake. His phone buzzed with a text from Isabella. "Whatever you decide, I'm with you." He set the phone down without responding. Lay in bed staring at the ceiling, weighing impossible choices against each other until exhaustion finally pulled him under. The decision came Thursday night, but not from him. Daniel was at the community center, helping a 12-year-old named Marcus debug some Python code when his phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer. "Daniel Carter? Speaking." This is Jennifer Park from HR. I'm going to need you to come in tomorrow morning for a meeting, 9 a.m. His blood went cold. What's this about? I'd rather discuss it in person. Conference room A. Don't be late. She hung up before he could ask anything else. Daniel stared at his phone, stomach churning. This was it. Someone had reported their suspicions. HR was calling him in, and if they were calling him, they were probably calling Isabella too. He texted her as soon as he got to his car. HR wants to see me tomorrow morning. Me too, 10 a.m. They know, probably. What do? We tell the truth. He drove home on autopilot, barely registering the road. Mia was at a friend's house for a sleepover, which meant he had the apartment to himself. He should have been grateful for the quiet. Instead, it just gave him more space to spiral. His phone rang at 8. Isabella. Hi. Hi. Her voice sounded steadier than he felt. Are you okay? Not even a little bit. Yeah, me neither. He heard ice clinking in a glass. I've been through a lot of difficult meetings in my life. Board reviews, investor presentations, federal audits. This might be the worst one. At least you'll have answers afterward. That's not as comforting as you think. She paused. Daniel, whatever happens tomorrow, don't make promises you can't keep. I was going to say that I don't regret this. Any of it. Even if it all falls apart tomorrow, I don't regret meeting you. He closed his eyes. I don't regret it either, but that doesn't make it hurt less. I know. They stayed on the phone for another hour, talking about nothing important because the important things were too heavy to carry. Eventually, Isabella yawned and said she needed to sleep. Daniel said the same, even though he knew he wouldn't. Good luck tomorrow, she said. You too. Daniel? Yeah? Whatever they ask, just tell the truth. Don't try to protect me. Don't try to make it sound better than it is. Just be honest. Okay. Promise me. I promise. Friday morning arrived too fast. Daniel got to the office at 8:45, stopped by his desk to drop off his bag, and headed straight to conference room A. Jennifer Park was already there, along with Steve and someone from legal whose name Daniel didn't catch. All three of them had the same carefully neutral expression. Mr. Carter, thank you for coming. Jennifer gestured to a chair. Please sit. He sat, folded his hands on the table to keep them from shaking. We've received some concerns about your conduct outside of work, Jennifer began, specifically regarding a relationship you may be having with another employee. Okay. Can you tell us if you're currently involved in a romantic or sexual relationship with anyone who works at Vaughn Technologies? This was the moment. The point where he could lie, deny everything, and hope the rumors died down. Or he could do what Isabella asked and tell the truth. Yes, I'm seeing someone who works here. Jennifer's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Can you tell us who? Isabella Vaughn. Steve's eyebrows shot up. The legal guy wrote something down. Jennifer just nodded like she'd expected it. How long has this relationship been going on? About 3 weeks. We met on a blind date about a month ago. Neither of us knew we worked together until we saw each other at the restaurant. And you continued the relationship despite the conflict of interest? We tried not to. We agreed it was a bad idea, but he stopped, choosing his words carefully. We kept seeing each other anyway. Were you aware of company policies regarding relationships between employees at different organizational levels? Yes. And you chose to violate those policies anyway? I chose to see someone I cared about. I didn't think of it as violating policy. I thought of it as my personal life. Jennifer exchanged a glance with the legal guy. Mr. Carter, you understand that Ms. Vaughn is not just another employee. She's the CEO. The power dynamic in this relationship is significant. I know who she is. Do you feel that you were coerced or pressured into this relationship in any way? That question landed like a punch. No, absolutely not. If anything, I was the one who hesitated. Isabella, Ms. Vaughn, she's been nothing but respectful. But you acknowledge that her position gives her power over your employment. On paper, sure, but that's not how this happened. We met as people first. We didn't even want to work together once we realized the situation. He leaned forward. Look, I know how this looks. I know what people are going to think. But this isn't some scandal where the boss is taking advantage of an employee. We're two adults who met by accident and decided to see where it went. That may be true, but perception matters, especially when it comes to workplace ethics. Jennifer closed her folder. We're going to need to conduct a full investigation. That means interviews with other employees, a review of any work-related interactions between you and Ms. Vaughn, and an assessment of whether this relationship has created any conflicts of interest. How long will that take? A few weeks, probably. In the meantime, you're not suspended, but we do need you to avoid any direct or indirect contact with Ms. Vaughn regarding work matters. No emails, no meetings, no projects where you'd be collaborating. And what happens after the investigation? That depends on what we find. Jennifer stood, signaling the meeting was over. We'll be in touch. You're free to return to your desk. Daniel left the conference room feeling like he'd been hit by a truck. His hands were still shaking. His heart was racing. He made it to the bathroom before his legs gave out, sitting in a stall with his head between his knees, trying to breathe through the panic. This was real. This was happening. And whatever happened next was out of his control. His phone buzzed, a text from Isabella. How did it go? About as bad as expected. You? Same. They're investigating. I know, they told me. I'm sorry. Don't be. We knew this was coming. He wanted to say more. Wanted to tell her he was scared and angry and regretting everything. But they'd been told to avoid contact, and texting probably counted. I should go. Okay. We'll figure this out. Yeah. He deleted the messages out of habit, then immediately felt stupid for it. HR was probably going to subpoena his phone records anyway. Nothing was private anymore. Nothing was safe. The rest of the day crawled by. Daniel kept his head down, avoided eye contact, and tried to ignore the whispers that started around lunch. People knew. Of course they knew. HR investigations didn't stay secret, especially when they involved the CEO. Ryan found him at his desk at 4. I heard. Good news travels fast. Are you okay? Do I look okay? Ryan sat on the edge of the desk. For what it's worth, I think you did the right thing. Telling the truth. Doesn't feel like the right thing. It rarely does. Ryan paused. You know there's going to be fallout, right? People are going to talk. They're going to make assumptions. I know. And you're ready for that. Daniel looked at his brother. No, but I don't have a choice. This is happening whether I'm ready or not. Do you love her? The question caught him off guard. He hadn't let himself think about it in those terms. Love was too big, too permanent. Love meant risking everything, and he'd already risked too much. I don't know. That's not a no. It's not a yes either. Ryan stood. Just take care of yourself, okay? And if you need anything, I'm here. Thanks. After Ryan left, Daniel packed up his things and left early. He couldn't stand another hour of sidelong glances and whispered conversations. Couldn't stand being the subject of everyone's speculation. He picked up Mia from her friend's house. She was hyper from too much sugar and not enough sleep, talking a mile a minute about everything they'd done. He let her talk, grateful for the distraction. Can we get pizza for dinner? She asked as they pulled into the apartment complex. Sure. Deep dish? Absolutely not. She grinned. Had to try. They ordered thin crust, ate in front of the TV, watched some animated movie Mia had seen a dozen times. She fell asleep halfway through, curled up against him. He carried her to bed, tucked her in, stood in the doorway watching her for a long time. This was what mattered. Not his job. Not his relationship. Not HR investigations or workplace gossip. Just this. His daughter, safe and asleep, trusting that he'd figure everything out. He just hoped he could live up to that trust. His phone buzzed at midnight. Isabella calling. Hey. Hey. Her voice was rough, like she'd been crying. I needed to hear your voice. Rough day. You could say that. She exhaled slowly. They asked me if I coerced you, if I used my position to pressure you into this relationship. What did you say? I told them the truth, that you're one of the few people who's ever treated me like a person instead of a title, that this was my choice as much as yours, that I'd rather lose my company than lose you. Daniel's breath caught. Isabella, I mean it. I've spent years building Vaughn Technologies. It's my legacy, my identity, everything I've worked for. But it's not everything I am, and I'm tired of pretending it is. What are you saying? I'm saying that if they force me to choose between the company and you, I choose you. You can't do that. Watch me. Isabella, think about what you're saying. Your whole life is tied up in that company. Your employees depend on you. The scholarships you fund, the people you help, all of that goes away if you walk away. Or maybe it doesn't. Maybe I find new ways to help people. Maybe I build something different. She paused. I'm not saying I want to leave. I'm saying I'm willing to if that's what it takes. Daniel closed his eyes. This was too much, too big. He'd never wanted anyone to make that kind of sacrifice for him. We'll figure this out, without you having to give up everything you've built. Promise? I promise I'll try. That's all I need. They stayed on the phone until Isabella's words started slurring with exhaustion and Daniel's eyes couldn't stay open anymore. Before they hung up, she said it again. I don't regret this. Neither do I. He meant it. Even with everything falling apart around them, even with the investigation and the gossip and the uncertain future, he didn't regret meeting her, didn't regret taking the risk. He just hoped that would be enough when everything finally came crashing down. The investigation dragged on for 2 weeks that felt like 2 months. Daniel went to work every day, did his job, and pretended not to notice the way conversations stopped when he walked into the break room. People were polite to his face and brutal behind his back. He knew because Ryan kept him updated, even when Daniel told him to stop. They're saying you're using her for money, Ryan reported one Tuesday over lunch. They ate in Daniel's car because the cafeteria had become unbearable. That she's having some kind of midlife crisis. That you're both idiots who deserve whatever happens. Anything else? Someone started a pool on how long until you get fired. Great. What are the odds? You don't want to know. Daniel took a bite of his sandwich, barely tasting it. I should have just lied. Said it was someone else, someone who didn't matter. She matters to you. That's the whole problem. No, the problem is that I thought I could have something good without it destroying my life. Ryan was quiet for a moment. For what it's worth, I think she's good for you. I've never seen you this miserable, but I've also never seen you this alive. Before her, you were just going through the motions. Work, Mia, sleep, repeat. Now you're actually living. Living would be a lot easier if people stopped treating me like I committed a crime. Give it time. Eventually, something else will happen and everyone will move on to the next scandal. But Daniel wasn't sure he had time. HR had interviewed half the office, reviewed every email he'd ever sent Isabella, all 3 of them, and they were all about server maintenance, and was now combing through security footage to see if they'd ever been alone together in the building. The answer was no, because they'd been careful. But careful wasn't the same as innocent in the court of public opinion. At home, things were only slightly better. Mia had picked up on his mood, asking fewer questions but watching him more closely. She'd stopped talking about school and friends, like she was afraid any additional stress would break him. It made him feel like the worst father in the world. Dad? She said one night while they were washing dishes. Are you going to lose your job? He froze, hands in soapy water. Where did you hear that? I heard you on the phone. You were talking to Uncle Ryan. Mia, you can't just listen to my conversations. I wasn't trying to. You were being loud. She dried a plate with more focus than necessary. So are you going to lose it? He wanted to lie, wanted to tell her everything was fine and she didn't need to worry. But she was too smart for that, and she deserved better than false comfort. I might. There's a situation at work that's complicated. The woman you're seeing, the one you won't tell me about. How did you... I'm not stupid, Dad. You've been different since you went on that date. Happier, but also more stressed. And you keep checking your phone and leaving the apartment at weird times. She set down the dish towel. Is she the reason you might lose your job? It's not her fault. It's... He searched for the right words. Sometimes things that seem simple turn out to be complicated. And sometimes the rules don't make sense, but you still have to follow them. That's another grown-up answer. Because it's a grown-up situation. She looked at him with those 2 old eyes. Do you love her? It was the same question Ryan had asked, the same question Daniel had been avoiding because answering it meant admitting things he wasn't ready to admit. I don't know yet. Maybe. Then fight for her. Don't just give up because things are hard. It's not that simple. It never is. But you're always telling me to stand up for what I believe in, to not let people push me around just because something's difficult. She grabbed another dish. You should take your own advice. Out of the mouths of 8-year-olds, Daniel finished the dishes in silence, thinking about what she'd said, about fighting instead of just surviving, about standing up instead of hiding. His phone rang at midnight. Not Isabella this time. They'd agreed to limit contact until the investigation wrapped up. This was Jennifer Park. Mr. Carter, I apologize for the late call, but we've completed our investigation and I wanted to inform you of our findings before the official report goes out tomorrow. Daniel sat up in bed, heart pounding. Okay. After extensive review of emails, security footage, personnel records, and interviews with colleagues, we found no evidence of workplace misconduct. Your relationship with Ms. Vaughn appears to have begun outside of work and has been conducted entirely separate from your professional duties. There's no indication of favoritism, coercion, or abuse of power. He let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. So I'm cleared? From a misconduct standpoint, yes. However, there's still the matter of the relationship itself and how it should be handled going forward. What does that mean? It means that while you didn't break any rules, the power dynamic still exists. Ms. Vaughn has proposed some policy changes that would allow relationships like yours to continue under certain conditions. The board is reviewing them now. What kind of conditions? Mandatory disclosure, regular check-ins with HR, recusal from any decisions that could directly impact your employment, and a clear reporting structure that ensures accountability. Jennifer paused. It's actually quite comprehensive. She's thought through a lot of scenarios. When will we know if the board approves? The meeting is tomorrow afternoon. I'll contact you as soon as I have an answer. Her voice softened slightly. For what it's worth, Mr. Carter, I believe Ms. Vaughn's proposal has merit. Workplace relationships happen. Pretending they don't just forces people into impossible situations. Thank you for being fair about this. Just doing my job. Have a good night. After she hung up, Daniel lay in the dark, processing. They'd been cleared of misconduct. Isabella had drafted new policies. The board was reviewing them tomorrow. It could still go wrong, boards were unpredictable. But for the first time in weeks, there was a path forward that didn't end in disaster. He wanted to call Isabella, to tell her what Jennifer had said. But it was almost 1 a.m, and she'd need to be sharp for the board meeting. Instead, he sent a text. HR called. We're cleared of misconduct. Your policies go to the board tomorrow. The response came immediately, like she'd been waiting by her phone. I know, Jennifer copied me on the report. Can't sleep? Not even a little bit. You? Same. Want to break our no contact rule? Desperately. My place, 20 minutes. Daniel looked at the clock, looked at Mia's closed door, looked at his keys on the nightstand. This was stupid, reckless, everything they'd been trying to avoid. I'll be there in 15. He left a note for Mia in case she woke up. Emergency at work, back soon, and drove to the Gold Coast, breaking at least 3 traffic laws. Isabella opened the door before he could knock, pulled him inside, kissed him like she'd been drowning, and he was air. We're not supposed to be doing this, he said between kisses. I don't care. The investigation just cleared us. We can't… Daniel. She pulled back, hands on his face. Shut up. So he did. Let her lead him to the couch. Let himself get lost in the feel of her, the taste of her, the way she said his name like it was the only word that mattered. They didn't talk about the investigation or the board meeting or what would happen if this all fell apart. They just existed in the moment, stealing time they probably shouldn't be stealing. Later, tangled together on the couch with the city light streaming through the windows, Isabella traced patterns on his chest. I'm scared, she said quietly. Of what? Tomorrow. The board. They could reject everything I've proposed. They could force me to choose between the company and you. What would you choose? I already told you. I know what you said, but saying it and doing it are different things. She was quiet for a long time. I built this company from nothing. I poured 7 years of my life into it. It's my legacy, my proof that I'm more than where I came from. She shifted to look at him. But it's not my life. You are. Or you could be if we survive this. That's a lot of pressure to put on someone you've known for 2 months. I know. I'm sorry. I don't mean to make this harder than it already is. You're not. He kissed her forehead. I'm scared too. But I'm also sure about this, about you, about wanting to fight for something instead of just letting it slip away because it's complicated. When did you get so brave? My daughter told me to take my own advice. Miss Isabella laughed, the sound breaking some of the tension. Smart kid. Too smart for her own good. He checked his phone. 3:47. I should go. Mia will be up in a few hours, and I don't want her to worry. Okay? Isabella walked him to the door, neither of them wanting to let go. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. I'll be thinking about you. I'll be thinking about you too. He kissed her one more time, then forced himself to leave before he could change his mind. The drive home was quiet, the streets empty except for delivery trucks and the occasional taxi. By the time he got back to his apartment, the sky was starting to lighten. Mia's door was still closed. His note was where he'd left it. He crumpled it up, tossed it in the trash, and fell into bed for 2 hours of sleep that felt like 2 minutes. The board meeting was scheduled for 2 in the afternoon. Daniel spent the morning at his desk, pretending to work while refreshing his email every 30 seconds. Ryan stopped by at 11 with coffee and moral support. Any word? Nothing yet? It's going to be fine. You don't know that. Neither do you, so we might as well be optimistic. Ryan sat on the edge of the desk. You know, I've been thinking about this whole thing, about how it started. Please don't remind me that this is your fault. Actually, I was going to say that maybe it's not. Maybe you two were always going to meet somehow. Maybe the blind date was just the universe's way of speeding up the inevitable. You sound like one of those fortune cookies. I'm just saying, maybe this was always supposed to happen. All the complications, the drama, the risk, maybe that's part of the story. Daniel looked at his brother, When did you get philosophical? When I realized my matchmaking attempt turned into a corporate scandal. Ryan grinned. But seriously, I hope it works out. For both of you. Thanks, I think. At 1:30, Daniel's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. He opened it, expecting spam, and found a message from Isabella's assistant, Marcus. Ms. Vaughn asked me to let you know the board meeting is starting. She wanted you to know she's fighting for this. Daniel stared at the message, chest tight. He'd never met Marcus, but the fact that Isabella had asked him to reach out meant something. Meant she was thinking about Daniel even in the middle of what was probably the most important meeting of her career. Thank you. Tell her good luck. Will do. The next 45 minutes were torture. Daniel couldn't focus on anything. Couldn't read emails, couldn't fix problems, couldn't even have a coherent conversation when someone from accounting stopped by with a question. He just sat at his desk, watching the clock, waiting. At 2:17, his phone rang. Jennifer Park. Mr. Carter, the board has made their decision. And? They've approved Ms. Vaughn's proposal with some modifications. Relationships between employees at different organizational levels will be permitted as long as both parties disclose the relationship, agree to regular HR check-ins, and establish clear boundaries around work-related decisions. So you can continue your relationship, yes, with the understanding that there will be oversight and accountability measures in place. Daniel felt something in his chest unclench. What are the modifications? Ms. Vaughn will need to recuse herself from any personnel decisions that directly affect you. That means she can't approve your raises, promotions, or terminations. Those decisions will go through a committee instead. Additionally, both of you will need to attend quarterly meetings with HR to ensure the relationship isn't creating workplace issues. That's fair. The board thought so too. There was some concern about optics, but Ms. Vaughn made a compelling case for why these policies benefit the entire company, not just her personal situation. When does this go into effect? Immediately. I'll send you both the official documentation this afternoon. In the meantime, congratulations. You're free to resume normal contact. After Jennifer hung up, Daniel sat at his desk, stunned. They'd done it. They'd survived the investigation, gotten the policies changed, and come out the other side with their jobs intact. It didn't seem real. His phone buzzed. Isabella. We won, I heard. Are you okay? Better than okay. Can I see you tonight? Yes. My place. I'll cook. You don't cook. I'll order in and pretend I cooked. Perfect. He was grinning at his phone when Ryan appeared at his cubicle. I take it from that stupid smile that things went well. Board approved the new policies. We're in the clear. Thank Christ, I was running out of ways to look supportive while secretly panicking. Ryan clapped him on the shoulder. I'm happy for you, man. Really. Thanks for everything. I know this whole thing was a mess. Best mess I ever created. Ryan's expression turned serious. But do me a favor. Don't waste this. You fought hard for it. Make it count. I will. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Daniel finished his work, sent the requisite emails, and left the office at 5 without looking back. He stopped at a grocery store to pick up the ingredients he had no idea how to use, then gave up and ordered Thai food on his way home. Mia was at the kitchen table when he walked in, working on math homework. She looked up, took in his expression, and smiled. Good day? Really good day. Does this mean you're not going to lose your job? Not today, at least. And the woman you won't tell me about? I can tell you about her now, if you want to hear it. Mia set down her pencil. I'm listening. So Daniel told her. Not everything. Some details weren't appropriate for an 8-year-old, but the important parts. How he'd met Isabella on a blind date Uncle Ryan set up. How they'd realized they worked together and tried to stop seeing each other but couldn't. How they'd fought to make it work, even when everyone said it was impossible. So she's your boss? Mia asked when he finished. Technically, yes, but we've set up rules to make sure that doesn't cause problems. Is she nice? Very nice. Does she make you happy? Yeah, kiddo, she does. Mia considered this. Can I meet her? Daniel's heart did something complicated. You want to? If she's important to you, then yeah. I want to meet her. Okay, I'll ask her, but give me a little time, all right? This is all still new. Fine, but not too long. I want to know if she's good enough for you. Pretty sure I'm the one who needs to be good enough for her. Disagree. You're the best dad in the world. She's lucky to have you. Daniel pulled his daughter into a hug, holding on maybe a little too long. When did you get so grown up? I've always been this grown up. You just weren't paying attention. Isabella arrived at 7, carrying a bottle of wine and looking nervous in a way Daniel had never seen. She'd changed out of her work clothes into jeans and a sweater, hair down, minimal makeup. She looked younger, more like the person he'd met at dinner that first night. Hi. Hi. He kissed her, then pulled back. Mia's in her room. She knows you're coming over. She does? Isabella's eyes went wide. You told her? I told her, and she wants to meet you, but not tonight. She's giving us space. Wow, that's a lot. Too much? No, it's perfect. She set down the wine. I'm terrified. Of what? An 8-year-old? Of disappointing her, of not being what she expects, of screwing this up before it even starts. Daniel took her hands. You're not going to screw this up. And Mia's not expecting perfection. She just wants to know you're real, and you're not going to hurt me. I'm definitely real, and I'm definitely not going to hurt you. Then you'll be fine. They ate Thai food on the couch, talked about the board meeting and what came next. Isabella was still processing, still trying to believe that the board had actually approved her proposal. I thought they'd fight me harder, she admitted. I was prepared for a battle, but they saw the logic. They understood that rigid policies don't prevent relationships. They just force them underground. You changed company policy. That's not nothing. I changed it for us. But it'll help other people too. People who've been hiding or scared or forced to choose between their jobs and their personal lives. She leaned against him. Something good came out of this mess. A lot of good came out of it. They stayed up too late, talking about everything and nothing, making plans they'd been afraid to make before. Weekend trips, meeting each other's families, all the normal things that normal couples did without fear of HR investigations. At some point, Mia's door opened and she padded into the living room, rubbing her eyes. Can't sleep, she announced. Daniel started to get up, but Isabella beat him to it. Want me to make you some warm milk? That's what my mom used to do when I couldn't sleep. Mia studied her for a long moment. Daniel held his breath. Okay, Mia finally said. Isabella went to the kitchen, found the milk, poured it into a mug. Mia sat at the counter watching her with open curiosity. You're Isabella. I am, and you're Mia. My dad talks about you a lot. He talks about you all the time. Good things? The best things. Isabella handed her the warm milk. He's really proud of you. He worries too much. That's because he loves you. Mia took a sip of milk, considering. Are you going to stick around? I'm going to try. Trying's not the same as doing. Isabella smiled. You're right. I am going to stick around, as long as your dad will have me. And if things get hard again, then we'll figure it out together. Mia seemed satisfied with that answer. She finished her milk, said goodnight to both of them, and went back to bed. Isabella returned to the couch, looking slightly shell-shocked. That was intense. That was her being easy on you. Wait until she really starts asking questions. I can't tell if I should be excited or terrified. Both. Definitely both. Isabella left around midnight, kissing Daniel at the door like she didn't want to go. He watched her walk to the elevator, waited until the doors closed, then went back inside feeling lighter than he had in weeks. The next few weeks settled into a new rhythm. Daniel and Isabella were careful at work, professional in meetings, cordial in hallways, nothing that would raise eyebrows. But outside the office, they stopped hiding. Isabella came to his apartment for dinner. He went to hers. They went on actual dates in public restaurants where people could see them. And if anyone recognized Isabella, they didn't care anymore. The gossip at work faded as people found new things to talk about. Some colleagues remained judgmental, but most seemed to accept that the relationship was legitimate and wasn't going anywhere. HR's quarterly check-ins were awkward but manageable. The oversight committee approved Daniel's performance review without incident. Life became almost normal, almost boring, in the best possible way. 6 weeks after the board meeting, Isabella showed up at Daniel's apartment on a Tuesday night with Chinese food and a question. I want to meet Mia properly, not just a midnight milk situation. Actually meet her, have dinner together, let her get to know me. Daniel set down his chopsticks. You're sure? I'm sure. If this is going to work long term, I need to be part of your whole life, not just the parts that fit around your daughter. She can be tough on people. I can handle tough. She's going to ask you a million questions. I'll answer them. And if she doesn't like you? Isabella met his eyes. Then I'll work harder until she does. Because she's the most important person in your life. And that means she's important to me too. So they planned it. Friday night, pizza and a movie at Daniel's place. Low-key, no pressure, just 3 people getting to know each other. Mia was nervous, which she tried to hide by being extra chatty. Isabella was nervous, which she tried to hide by asking too many questions. Daniel was nervous watching both of them be nervous, which created a feedback loop of awkwardness that somehow worked itself out over pepperoni and breadsticks. What kind of movies do you like? Isabella asked. Fantasy mostly, dragons, magic, that kind of thing. Mia grabbed another slice. What about you? I don't watch many movies. I'm usually working. That's sad. Yeah, it kind of is. My dad works a lot too, but he makes time for movies with me. You should make time for things you like. Isabella smiled. You're right. Maybe you can recommend some movies I should watch? I can make you a list. They watched an animated film about a girl who discovers she's actually a princess, which Daniel had seen at least 15 times. Mia provided running commentary. Isabella asked questions that showed she was actually paying attention. By the end of the night, Mia had decided Isabella was okay, but she needs to watch more movies and stop working so much. After Mia went to bed, Isabella helped Daniel clean up the kitchen. That went well, she said. You think? She didn't hate me? That's a win. She liked you. She's just cautious. Smart kid. Daniel dried a dish thinking about how surreal this was. 2 months ago, he'd been a single father going through the motions, avoiding risk, playing it safe. Now he was standing in his kitchen with a billionaire CEO who'd just watched a princess movie with his daughter. Life was strange. Thank you, he said. For what? For trying, for being here, for fighting through all the bullshit to make this work. Isabella set down the dish she was washing. You don't have to thank me for wanting to be with you, Daniel. That's not a favor. That's just me being selfish. Still, thank you. She kissed him, soapy hands and all, and Daniel thought maybe Ryan had been right. Maybe this was always supposed to happen. All the complications, the drama, the risk, maybe that was just part of their story. The part that made the ending matter. And they weren't at the ending yet. Not even close. They were just getting started. 6 months changed everything and nothing at the same time. Daniel still lived in the same apartment, still drove the same aging Toyota, still worked in tech operations fixing problems most people never knew existed. But the space between those fixed points had filled with something he'd stopped believing he'd ever find again. A life that felt whole instead of just functional. Isabella had become a constant presence, not in the overwhelming way he'd feared, but in the small moments that mattered. Saturday mornings at the farmer's market with Mia, who'd appointed herself as the official taste tester of every cheese sample. Sunday dinners where Isabella attempted to cook and Daniel supervised with varying degrees of success. Weeknight calls when they were both too tired to be charming, but talked anyway because not talking felt worse. The office had adapted too, though not without friction. There were still people who looked at Daniel differently, who questioned whether his project assignments were merit-based or favoritism disguised as policy compliance. The oversight committee helped. Every promotion, every raise, every performance review went through them instead of Isabella. But perception was harder to control than procedure. Someone in finance said I only got the server upgrade project because I'm sleeping with the boss, Daniel told Ryan over lunch one Tuesday. They were back to eating in the cafeteria, though Daniel still chose tables in the corner out of habit. What did you say? Nothing. What am I supposed to say? Actually, I got it because I'm the most qualified person for the job. That just sounds defensive. So let them think what they want. You know the truth. Isabella knows the truth. That's all that matters. Easy for you to say. You're not the one people are talking about. Ryan stabbed at his salad. You're right. I'm the idiot who set this whole thing in motion and then got to watch from the sidelines. Much better position. Daniel smiled despite himself. Still blaming yourself for that? Every day. But also taking credit when things go well, so it evens out. The truth was that things were going well, better than Daniel had let himself hope. The relationship that had started as an impossible complication had settled into something solid, something real. Isabella had learned to leave work at the office most nights, to be present instead of distracted. Daniel had learned to accept help when she offered it, to let someone else carry some of the weight instead of insisting he could handle everything alone. But there were still fractures neither of them talked about. The way Isabella tensed when board members questioned her judgment. The way Daniel flinched when people whispered in hallways. The careful dance they did around certain topics, like the future, like what came next, like whether this thing between them was permanent or just a really good run that would eventually end. Those fractures came to a head on a Thursday in October when Daniel got called into an emergency meeting with Steve and two people from IT security he'd never met. His first thought was that someone had hacked the servers again. His second thought, arriving with a cold rush of dread, was that someone had found a new reason to question his relationship with Isabella. He was half right. We've identified the source of the financial discrepancies from earlier this year, the older security guy said. His name was Robert, and he had the kind of face that suggested he'd seen every variety of corporate fraud and wasn't impressed by any of it. The transactions that were initially flagged under your credentials. So Daniel's stomach dropped. I thought that was resolved. HR cleared me. You were cleared of wrongdoing, yes, but we've been continuing to investigate who actually initiated those transfers. Robert pulled up a screen on his laptop, turned it to face Daniel. We traced the IP address to a former employee named Marcus Webb. The name meant nothing to Daniel. Who? He worked in IT security until about 8 months ago. Left the company under less than ideal circumstances. There were questions about his access to sensitive systems. Robert scrolled through what looked like server logs. He used your credentials to move money between accounts, small amounts over several weeks. When you were flagged, he assumed that would be the end of it, that you'd be fired and he'd be clear. But I wasn't fired. No, and that made him nervous. So he tried again, this time targeting someone else. Robert pulled up another file. 3 weeks ago, similar transactions showed up under credentials belonging to Isabella Vaughn. Daniel went cold. Did they think we caught it faster this time. But yes, there was an initial investigation. It was resolved within 48 hours once we made the connection to Webb. Steve leaned forward, his usually annoyed expression replaced with something closer to concern. The reason we're telling you this is that Webb left a trail. Emails, messages, evidence that suggests he targeted you specifically because of your relationship with Ms. Vaughn. Why? Revenge, near as we can tell. He was let go after Isabella discovered he'd been selling company data to competitors. She handled it personally, made sure he was blacklisted from the industry. He blamed her for ruining his career. So he went after me to get to her. That's the working theory. Discredit you, make you look like a thief, damage her judgment by extension. Robert closed the laptop. Webb's been arrested. The evidence is solid. This is over. But it didn't feel over. It felt like confirmation of Daniel's worst fear, that being with Isabella came with risks he couldn't control, threats he couldn't see coming, that loving her made him a target. After the meeting, Daniel sat in his car for 20 minutes, trying to process. Someone had tried to destroy his career, not because of anything he'd done, but because he was connected to Isabella. And it could happen again. Different person, same motivation. Her world was full of people who held grudges and had resources to act on them. His phone buzzed. Isabella. Heard about the meeting. Are you okay? He stared at the message. Was he okay? He didn't know anymore. Can we talk tonight? Of course. My place or yours? Mine. I need to put Mia to bed first. I'll be there at 8. The conversation with Mia that evening was harder than he expected. She'd gotten comfortable with Isabella over the past few months, had stopped asking if she was going to stick around and started assuming she would. But Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that he was putting his daughter in danger by proxy, that Webb was just the first of many people who might try to use him to hurt Isabella. Dad, you're doing the thing again, Mia said while they ate dinner. Spaghetti, because Daniel hadn't had the energy to cook anything more complicated. What thing? The thing where you're here but not really here, where you're thinking too hard about stuff. Sorry, kiddo, work stuff. Is it bad work stuff or complicated work stuff? Little bit of both. She twirled pasta around her fork with the kind of precision that suggested she was thinking hard about something too. Is Isabella okay? She's fine. Why? Because whenever you get like this, it's usually about her. Not in a bad way, she added quickly. Just in a worried way. Like you're scared something's going to go wrong. Daniel set down his fork. Do you worry about that? About things going wrong? Sometimes. But then I remember that you're good at fixing things. And Isabella's good at fixing things. So probably you can fix things together. When did you get so smart? I've always been this smart. You keep forgetting. After Mia went to bed, Daniel cleaned up the kitchen and waited for Isabella. She arrived exactly at 8, carrying a bag from his favorite Thai place and looking exhausted in a way that went beyond just a long day at work. I heard the full story, she said as soon as she was inside. Robert briefed me this afternoon. Webb targeted you because of me. I know. I'm sorry. For what? You didn't do anything wrong. I fired him. I made him an enemy. And he came after you because he knew it would hurt me. She set down the food, faced him directly. This is what I was afraid of from the beginning, that my life, my baggage, would spill over onto you. That's not fair. He made choices, bad choices. That's on him, not you. But if you weren't with me, if I weren't with you, I'd be miserable and alone and going through the motions like I was before. Webb's a criminal. He would have found another target, another way to cause damage. This isn't about us. Isabella sat on the couch, elbows on her knees, head in her hands. I keep thinking about what else could go wrong. What other threats are out there that I can't see? People I've fired, competitors I've beaten, anyone who has a reason to want to hurt me and sees you as the easiest way to do it. Daniel sat next to her. So we're careful. We pay attention. We don't let fear make our decisions for us. Is that enough? I don't know, but it's what we've got. They ate Thai food in silence for a while, the weight of everything unsaid pressing down on them. Finally, Isabella spoke. I've been thinking about something for a while now, something big. How big? Step down as CEO big. Daniel nearly choked on his pad thai. What? Hear me out. I've been running Vaughn Technologies for 7 years. Built it from nothing, proved what I needed to prove. But I'm 30 now, and I'm tired of living my entire life through the company. I'm tired of being a target. I'm tired of making every decision through the lens of what's best for shareholders instead of what's best for me. Isabella, you love that company. I do. But I love other things too. Things I've been neglecting because I thought the company was the only thing that mattered. She turned to face him. I have enough money that I never have to work again. I could focus on the scholarships, maybe start a foundation, actually use my resources to help people instead of just writing checks and moving on. This is because of what happened with Webb. It's because of a lot of things. Webb was just the final push. She took his hand. I don't want to be the person who's always looking over her shoulder, always waiting for the next crisis. I want a life, Daniel, a real one. With you, with Mia, with time to actually live instead of just survive. What would you do after you step down? I don't know yet. That's the scary part. For 7 years, I've been Isabella Vaughn, CEO. I don't know who I am without that title. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Maybe I'd figure it out. Maybe I'd be terrible at it and regret everything, but at least I'd be trying. Daniel understood that feeling more than he wanted to admit. The fear of change. The safety of familiar routines, even when they stopped making you happy. The courage it took to walk away from something you'd built just because you wanted something different. When would this happen? I'd need to find a replacement, train them. Probably 6 months minimum, maybe a year. But I've already started the conversation with the board. She squeezed his hand. I wanted to tell you before it became official. This isn't just about the company, it's about us. About having a future that isn't always complicated by corporate politics and power dynamics. Have you told anyone else? Just my assistant Marcus and Claire. They both think I'm crazy. Are you? Probably, but I'm also sure. I've spent too much of my life playing it safe, building walls, protecting myself from anything that might hurt. And then I met you, and all those walls started coming down, and I realized I don't want to live like that anymore. Daniel pulled her close, felt her relax against him. I don't want you to give up everything for me. I'm not. I'm giving up one thing to make room for everything else. She looked up at him. Is that okay? Is this something you can live with? As long as you're sure it's what you want. I've never been more sure of anything. They stayed like that for a long time. Two people who'd been forced to fight for something most people took for granted, trying to figure out what came next. Eventually, Daniel pulled back. I have something to tell you, too. Something I've been thinking about. Should I be worried? Depends on how you feel about proposals. Isabella went very still. What? Not right now, but soon. I've been carrying a ring around for 3 weeks trying to figure out the right time, and then tonight happened and I realized there's never going to be a perfect time. There's just going to be us, trying to build something good in the middle of all the chaos. You want to marry me? Yeah, I do, if you'll have me. But Daniel, I'm about to step down as CEO and probably have an identity crisis, and maybe start a foundation I have no idea how to run. Are you sure you want to sign up for that? I'm sure I want to sign up for you. Everything else we'll figure out as we go. She kissed him then, hard and desperate, like she was afraid he might disappear if she didn't hold on tight enough. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, she was crying. Is that a yes? That's a ask me properly and find out. Now? Not now. I look terrible when I cry. Ask me when I'm prepared and can give you a proper answer. You're very demanding for someone who's unemployed. I'm not unemployed yet. I'm pre-unemployed. There's a difference. She wiped her eyes. But yes, when you ask me properly, the answer will be yes. The news about Isabella stepping down broke 3 weeks later. The business press had a field day with speculation, hostile takeover, board conflict, health issues. The truth was boring by comparison. She was tired and wanted to do something different. But boring didn't sell papers, so the speculation continued. Inside Vaughn Technologies, the reaction was mixed. Some people were devastated, feeling like they were losing the visionary who'd built the company. Others were relieved, seeing it as an opportunity for fresh leadership. Daniel mostly stayed out of it, focusing on his work and avoiding break room conversations about what it all meant. Isabella's replacement was announced in December, a woman named Sarah Chen who'd been VP of Operations and understood the company inside and out. The transition plan was detailed and careful, designed to reassure investors and employees that Vaughn Technologies would survive the change. Through it all, Daniel and Isabella kept building their life together, in the small spaces between the big announcements. Mia's parent-teacher conference, where Isabella sat next to Daniel and asked thoughtful questions about Mia's progress in math. Thanksgiving dinner with Ryan, who took credit for everything and couldn't stop grinning about it. A Saturday afternoon teaching kids to code at the community center, where Isabella showed up unannounced and ended up staying for 3 hours helping a teenager debug a Python script. It was in one of those small moments, a random Wednesday in January, when they were walking through Millennium Park with Mia running ahead to look at the ice sculptures, that Daniel decided it was time. "Mia, come here for a second." She ran back, cheeks red from the cold. "What's up?" "I need to ask Isabella something, and I want you here when I do." Mia's eyes went wide. "Is this what I think it is?" "Depends on what you think it is." "Oh my gosh, Dad, just ask her already." Isabella looked between them, confused. "Ask me what?" Daniel pulled the ring from his pocket. Simple, elegant, the kind of thing Isabella would actually wear instead of keeping in a drawer. He didn't get down on one knee because the ground was freezing and he was 32, not 22, and they were past the point of grand gestures. "Isabella Vaughn. We met 6 months ago because my idiot brother thought we'd be a good match. He was right, even though everything that came after was complicated and messy and almost destroyed both our careers. You're the smartest, strongest, most frustrating person I've ever met. You make me want to be braver than I am. You make me believe that taking risks is worth it, even when it's terrifying. And I want to spend the rest of my life figuring out who we are when we're not fighting to stay together, when we can just be together without all the noise and complications." Mia was bouncing on her toes. "Dad, you're taking too long." "I'm getting there." He held up the ring. "Will you marry me? Not as my boss or a CEO or a billionaire, but as the person who ate bad Thai food on my couch and helped my daughter with her homework and told me I was worth fighting for even when I didn't believe it." Isabella was crying again, which seemed to be a pattern with her lately. "That's not fair. I said I wanted to be prepared." "Life's not fair. You taught me that. I hate you." "Yes. Yes, you idiot. Obviously, yes." He slipped the ring on her finger while Mia cheered loud enough to attract attention from people walking by. Someone started clapping. Then more people joined in, strangers celebrating something they knew nothing about except that 2 people had just promised to try. That night, after Mia was asleep and Isabella had called Claire to share the news, they sat on Daniel's couch talking about logistics. The wedding could be small. Neither of them wanted something huge. Spring, maybe, or summer. Somewhere that mattered to them instead of some venue chosen because it looked good in photos. "I want Mia involved," Isabella said. "This isn't just about us. It's about becoming a family." "She'll have opinions, strong ones." "Good. I want to hear them. Even when she insists we need a dragon ice sculpture?" "Especially then." Daniel leaned back, pulling Isabella with him. "This is really happening. We're getting married." "Having second thoughts?" "Not even a little bit. Just still processing. 6 months ago, I thought my life was going to be work, and Mia, and volunteering until I died. Now I'm engaged to someone who's about to start a foundation and probably drag me to charity events. I would never drag you anywhere. I'd ask very nicely and wear you down until you agreed. That's the same thing. It's really not." They stayed up too late making plans that would probably change a dozen times before anything was finalized. But that was okay. They'd learned that plans were just guesses about the future, and the future had a way of surprising you whether you were ready or not. Isabella's last day as CEO was in March, exactly 1 year after Daniel had walked into that restaurant expecting a forgettable blind date. The company threw a party, formal, expensive, full of speeches about legacy and vision and gratitude. Daniel went because Isabella wanted him there, stood in the back and watched her handle the attention with the same grace she'd handled everything else. When it was finally over and they were alone in the car driving back to his apartment, Isabella took off her heels and threw them in the back seat. "I'm never wearing those again." "Never?" "Well, maybe at the wedding, but that's it." "What are you going to do tomorrow, when you wake up and don't have a company to run?" "Sleep in, maybe make breakfast. Take Mia to school if you want help." She looked at him. "I don't know, Daniel. For the first time in 7 years, I actually don't know. And it's terrifying and exciting, and I might have a complete breakdown by noon. If you do, I'll be there. Promise? Promise. They got married in May on a Saturday that threatened rain but stayed clear. The ceremony was at a small venue overlooking the lake, just family and close friends. Mia stood next to Isabella as a junior bridesmaid, wearing a dress she'd picked out herself, and could not stop twirling in. Ryan gave a speech that was equal parts sentimental and taking credit for their entire relationship. Claire flew in from Seattle and cried through the whole ceremony. When Daniel said his vows, words about choosing courage over fear, about building something real in a world that tried to tell them it was impossible, he meant every one of them. And when Isabella said hers, about finding home in a person instead of a title, about learning that strength meant being vulnerable with someone who wouldn't weaponize it, he believed her completely. They danced badly at the reception, ate cake that Mia had helped pick out, and left early because none of them were people who thrived in crowds. The honeymoon was 2 weeks later, a trip to a cabin in Wisconsin where they could be completely alone and remember what it felt like to exist without anyone watching. Life after the wedding was different in ways Daniel hadn't expected. Isabella threw herself into the foundation work with the same intensity she'd given the company, but now she came home at reasonable hours and actually took weekends off. Daniel got promoted to senior systems analyst, approved by the committee without controversy because his work spoke for itself. Mia adjusted to having 2 adults in her life who showed up to school events and helped with homework and argued about whether deep dish pizza counted as real food. There were still hard days. Isabella had moments where she missed running the company, where she felt adrift without the structure it had provided. Daniel had moments where he worried about money or wondered if he was enough for someone who'd built an empire from nothing. Mia had moments where she tested boundaries and pushed back against rules she didn't like. But they learned to handle those moments together, to talk instead of hiding, to ask for help instead of pretending they had all the answers, to accept that being imperfect didn't mean being inadequate. 1 year after the wedding, Daniel found Isabella in their home office. They'd moved to a bigger apartment, one with enough space for all 3 of them, staring at financial reports for the foundation. She looked up when he came in. We fully funded 47 scholarships this year and started a mentorship program connecting students with professionals in their fields. That's good. It's better than good. It's kids who wouldn't have had a chance getting one. Kids like I was. She smiled. I think I'm doing more good now than I ever did running the company. You did plenty of good then too. Maybe, but this feels different. More personal, more real. She stood, stretched. Is Mia ready for dinner? She's setting the table. Apparently it's our turn to attempt cooking and her turn to supervise. She's going to be impossible about this. Absolutely. They walked to the kitchen together, where Mia was indeed setting the table and providing running commentary on Daniel's attempt to make chicken parmesan. Dad, you're burning the cheese. I'm not burning anything. It's smoking. That's steam. That's smoke. Isabella laughed, kissed Daniel's cheek, and took over before he could actually burn anything. They ate dinner as a family, talked about their days, made plans for the weekend. Normal things, ordinary things. Things that would have seemed impossibly domestic to Daniel a year ago, but now felt like exactly where he was supposed to be. Later that night, after Mia was asleep and the dishes were done, Daniel and Isabella stood on their balcony looking out at Chicago's lights. The city stretched in every direction, millions of people living their own complicated stories, fighting their own battles, trying to build something that mattered. Do you ever regret it? Daniel asked. The choice you made, stepping down, marrying me, all of it. Not once. Isabella leaned against him. Do you? No. But I wonder sometimes if we got lucky, if things could have gone differently. They could have. We could have walked away that first night. We could have let the investigation destroy us. We could have chosen safety over risk. She turned to face him. But we didn't. We fought for this. And that matters more than luck. She was right. They'd fought for this. Through gossip and investigations and people who said it couldn't work. Through their own fears and doubts and the weight of expectations they'd never asked for. They'd fought and they'd won. Not because they were perfect, but because they'd refused to let imperfection be an excuse for giving up. That was the thing Daniel had learned over the past year and a half. Love wasn't about finding someone who completed you or made everything easy. It was about finding someone worth fighting for, worth being brave for, worth building a life with, even when that life was messy and complicated and nothing like what you'd planned. It was about standing on a balcony with your wife, knowing your daughter was safe asleep inside, and feeling like despite everything that had tried to tear you apart, you'd managed to build something real. Something that mattered. Something that was yours. The city kept humming below them, indifferent to their story, already moving on to whatever came next. But up here, in this moment, Daniel had everything he needed. Not a perfect life. Perfect lives didn't exist outside of movies and greeting cards. But a real one. A good one. One he'd fought for and earned and planned to keep fighting for every single day. And honestly, that was more than enough.